Alright, so we've got a 2001 Ford Excursion. The problem is the air conditioning is not working. Freon is full of charge. The compressor clutch is good, but we still have no air conditioning when the AC is turned on. Nothing in the front or the rear. So I'm going to show you what I found out with this thing and what's going on. So let's pop the hood, go take a look. You can see the compressor clutch isn't moving, but when I wiggle this AC refrigerant high pressure side connector, now if we unplug it, you can see the terminal's all burnt up. Got a replacement terminal here. We're going to go ahead and install. Now it's important to take note which wires go where, because as you can see on the new connector here, we have different color wires. On the vehicle we have a red wire with yellow tracer and a tan wire with green tracer. On the replacement wire here, we have a green wire with a tan tracer that's going to be used, and a solid purple wire. So I'm going to cut the red with yellow tracer off, as well as the white wire off. And that's why I was saying it can get confusing sometimes, because as you can see, the red and yellow wires are the same color. But the problem is, they're not in the same location on the connector. So I'm going to cut these wires off, and then cut these wires off right about here. You can see how they're kind of burnt a little bit. They look a little dark. So I'm going to cut them right back here to ensure we get some good wire. Be careful not to nick the insulation on the other wires as you cut these off. I'm going to cut them off right at the base there. There's one. And there's two. So now we have the other two wires that we're going to splice into the harness on the vehicle. If you've got some extra room in your toolbox, save these wires. You never know when you're going to need them. And we're going to go ahead and cut the wires here on the old connector. It's going to fall, so I'm going to hold it here like so while I cut it. There we go. There's the old connector. You can see the burnt up terminal in there. That's why the AC wasn't working. Alright, there's a new one. Let's install the new one. Now CarQuest was kind enough to supply me with wires that have been pre-stripped, if you know what I'm saying. They've got a little cut in the insulation here, so all you have to do is pull that off and expose the wires, and you're good to go. However, I am going to have to strip the wires here that went to the old connector from the harness on the vehicle. So take a little wire strippers. Let's go ahead and strip these back. Like that. I'm looking at 16 gauge wire. Just like so. That's all let's do it. Now it's up to you whether you want to solder and use heat shrink tube on your connector repairs here. But what I like to do is use butt connectors and then use a piece of heat shrink tube around the butt connector and the new wires themselves. because the butt connector is a lot easier to do. The soldering is okay, but it can be really difficult to get a good solder down, especially one that doesn't have jagged wire edges sticking out and creating a potential short. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp the butt connector here. And this pair of pliers is actually pretty unique. It doubles the amount of torque you put on it. I've actually cut right through pennies with the wire cutter there. So we'll crimp that down really good. There's that. Give it a good tug. Make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Do the same thing over here, like so. Clamp it down. There you go. Give it a good tug. Make sure it doesn't come out. And you're ready to go back on the vehicle. One thing you don't want to forget, though, is the heat shrink. So let's go ahead and put the heat shrink tube on. I prefer to buy the heat shrink tubing in bulk like this. That comes in a bunch of different sizes. That way, you've got a big selection, you've got plenty of it, you'll never run out. So, let's choose a piece here that fits properly. It's a little loose fit, so let's try the next one down. That one's not going to fit at all. So we'll go ahead and go with this size here. Get a piece. You want it to fit snugly over the butt connector, like so. So as you can see, that piece fits perfectly. Takes a little time to work them on there, but after you get your heat shrink tubing worked on, you'll slide them all the way down to this part of the harness like I'll show you, and then we'll crimp these down to the wires on the vehicle. Once you've checked and double checked that you have your heat shrink tubing on the harness and it's ready to go, I say double check because I have forgotten and had to tear apart connections again. But what we'll do is we'll compare what wires go and where again. As you can see on the old connector here, we have the red wire with yellow tracer on top and the tan wire with green tracer on bottom. So that means that the purple wire on the new connector is going to connect with the red wire with yellow tracer. So we'll take the purple wire here, go ahead and splice it into the connector. Just crimp it down. It's a little difficult to work with short wires, but it is doable. There's one. Give it a good tug. Not coming out, that's good. Let's do the second one here. Tug on it, make sure it doesn't come apart. And we're good. Now next thing we're going to do here, slide this heat shrink tubing down over the butt connectors so that they're in the middle of this tubing here. Slide it over. Make sure you're in the halfway point so you have even coverage. You can see they're about in the middle there. Now, what we're going to do next, you'll need a heat gun, a hair dryer, or even a little lighter will work too. You just need a source of heat. What we're going to do here is melt the heat shrink tubing, or not necessarily melt it, but heat it up so that it shrinks. You'll see what happens here in the video. It's pretty cool. And it seals up the connection. So let's go ahead and turn the heat gun on. Like I said, it's basically like a hair dryer. You'll be able to see how this works and why they call it heat shrink tube. So let's go ahead and do this. And the thing to keep in mind is some butt connectors have the same principle. When you heat them up, they'll actually shrink around the connector, and they have a little adhesive in there that melts as well and ensures a good connection and no water contamination. But these particular butt connectors didn't have that. That's why I used the heat shrink tube around them and then melted them down. So you can see now the heat shrink tube is wrapped securely around the butt connectors. So I'm going to let my heat gun cool down. While that's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and cut this little wire loom off right here, since it's not going to fit around the butt connectors. Then we're going to take some electrical tape, wrap up the new wire harness here in electrical tape, plug it in, and see if it works. And there you have it, a nice clean terminal replacement. Alright, let's plug her in and see what happens. AC's on full. Let's go see if the compressor's running.